Okay, now we're recording. So let me start over again. Welcome to the sprint planning of Project Meteor. This is the first sprint planning we're having. Before we start, we're going to go through some terms and conditions we decided on beforehand. And those are mainly organizational things, like that we will have 1 week long sprints. Each Monday, we will do a sprint planning, and before this sprint planning, we will do a sprint demo. This means we have like a scheduled slot for 1 hour on Monday mornings. That's this slot we're currently starting. First half of it, starting next week, will be dedicated to sprint demos, where each of the work streams will show or just tell us what they've accomplished. And in the second half, we will plan for the next week for the next sprint. And this meeting is recorded. So those are some basic rules that we've set on before this. And before we dig into the actual sprint planning, we have few discussion points that we wanted to cover. I think Christoph had one that was about the organization, where the repos and tracking should live, if it should stay in the operate first or elsewhere. Christoph, can you maybe share what are you thinking about?
Yes, I was thinking just about automation aspects. So can we have our friendly bots taking care of a few things for us? And B, I was thinking about, is Meteor really related to operate first? I think that Marcel said that, or I said that earlier. It's a thing that we want to drive as our common cause in AI CVE. Therefore, my thinking was just branding, marketing-ish. Let's put all that stuff into AI CVE. At the same time, I didn't think about GitHub organizational problems like if we have a project over here, can we have repositories over there and all that blah, blah, blah. Maybe Tom, you said that it might be easier to just keep it where it is. But really think about, it's not operate first we're talking about. That's just given us a platform. It's AI CVE that is engaging in this project. Conclusion? Shall I do a conclusion? I'm happy with the situation as is, but nevertheless would be happier if we move it around.
Yeah, I don't really care. Like, to me, it makes sense to keep it where it is because it's easier for me to live within one organization right now, which is the operate first. With all the repos that I'm touching are basically within this org, but I think most of you are also working in most of the other orgs that we have, so I don't really care.
Yes, I'll come back. Maybe I'm just gonna move it in 2 weeks and don't ask again and see what everybody feels. Maybe there's no impact, or maybe we just keep it here. Let's keep on going. It is really not that important.
Yeah, the only thing, Christoph, is the automation. Does it require to move it to the AI COE organization to add automation?
No, it would be easier to do that on AI COE because I don't know if we start automating. Well, if Tom and I start commanding the bots, because Tom loves same bots as I do, how we impact the operate first organization, because most of the stuff is rolled out organization-wide.
Yes, sorry.
The Elira demo that we're like focusing on, that's in the AI COE organization, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then Hema, you're also working on like a separate but related project. What organization is that part of?
That's just actually part of Operate First. We just created it as a new repo as of now. But if we want to move that around as well, I think that should be okay. But that's also like a very generic repo, which is focusing on all the different ways we're trying to drive data within the team. So it has like a lot of guides, a lot of documentation, with references to Operate First, maybe because we have a lot of work that could be referenced via Operate First. That's why we've kept it within this org, but I think it should be okay to move it around.
Okay. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe since it seems like there's no pressure to move anything and it's all already in different places, we leave it as it is. And then if we run into some issue, we can move things around.
I was going to say that doesn't the AICO AIOps group fit better for this purpose since it's all data science and like Jupyter Notebook image building stuff?
Logically, when it comes to like the project content and the idea behind it, I think it fits better in the AICOE org.
Yeah.
Yeah, and since we're like on the technical level, we're undecided or we don't really care because we can do it in both orgs. So the technical aspects are really not important in this case. We can think about it ideologically and just move it there just to keep the messaging as clear as possible, maybe. Okay, let's move it then. Let's move it then.
I mean, that is one of the reasons why I'm going to come back to this topic in a little bit of time, because everybody should be sure this is AICOE. It's not AI Ops, it's not data science, it's not anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But let's keep on moving. It's a good reminder for me.
Okay. Another discussion topic was by Isabel in chat. There's a time conflict with AIOps team meeting. Just to quickly address that bit, the team meeting for AIOps is happening bi-weekly in this very time slot. Since it's Marcel's meeting, and Marcel's on PTO right now, we'll probably know better once he's back. But he has scheduled a pretty generous time slot for the AIOps team meeting, so maybe we can push that one back a bit or maybe make it shorter. I don't know. And put it after this sprint planning. I think this sprint planning for the project Meteor should be kept as short as possible. And also it's a focus for 1 quarter only. So it will eventually be finished and go away. And we will keep the AIOps team meeting.
Sounds good. Just pretty much everybody here is also everybody in the other meeting. So
yeah.
But,
I've checked the other meeting room and there's nobody waiting there. So so that's good. Let's start with goals for this upcoming sprint. We've walked through or brainstormed through what we would like to cover in this very first sprint just after the Project Meteor kickoff with a few other folks here. So that's Christoph, Marcel, Michael Schrey, Emma, Andrela, Isabel as well. And I'm sorry, I don't see the full list right now. So multiple people are aware of this goal already. To the rest of you, we've decided to work in 3 distinct separate working streams. One is focused on data science, another is focused on data. The first one is focused on data science repos, which in this case is the Elira tutorial. The other is focused on the build pipelines and basically packaging the Project Meteor into consumable format for end user. And the third work stream is data-driven development to measure the impact of this project. So we've come up with 3 different goals for this sprint. First one is to go through the Elira tutorial, review it, get yourself familiar with the project, with the workshop, with the tutorial, how it works, where it's lacking, what steps you need to do manually before you can start it, and so on and so on. So if you're interested in this working stream, Michael will be your contact point, and basically we're talking about this issue, this one, where we want to get some feedback on the Elira tutorial to make it better, make it consumable for users. It's not initially changing things around. It's not trying to redo or rewrite the tutorials. It's getting familiar with what's available as of right now.
Yeah, and I can update this issue to be more specific for people as give them any information. But I think one thing to consider when you're going through is essentially our ultimate goal is to have drop a link and it deploys the entire demo for you, and that includes things like deploying the model, right, or like having a Selden available to you. So anytime that there's like a step in which you have to do something where you like interact with OpenShift, or you have to go and request an issue to get a Ceph bucket, I don't know necessarily if we should spend our time doing that, but just like logging that those are places where we're going to need to figure out a solution, because that's not how a one drop link and deployed tutorial should look, basically. So looking for the gaps in the tutorial that should be filled, I think, is an important part, as well as just making sure that it like flows and makes sense.
And when we say collect feedback for this issue, should we like structure it in a way, something like open, the result of this card could be like open a few issues, or like log it in this issue? Like, should we aim for opening like 10 other issues, which is essentially our feedback from our walkthrough on the tutorial?
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, so when you come across a thing that you find is a problem, I would say open an issue in the Meteor repository and tag it as whatever shooting star, and then we can assess how they will be solved. But yes, basically opening issues. Thanks.
If you're interested in this working stream, assign yourself to this issue. We can have as many assignees here as we can handle. If you're interested, just assign yourself. Similar stuff for a second working stream. That's Team Comet. That will be coordinated by me. And what we want to do is similar stuff, but for the build pipelines. We would like to get ourselves familiar with build pipelines we have in AICOE CI, because besides Christoph, Harshad, Frido, and Francesco, nobody knows what's going on in there, and we need to understand those things if we want to build on top of it. Okay, I'll fix those permissions, Karan, later on after the meeting. So back to this issue. I've described some questions that you may ask yourself, and just try to envision different scenarios, how we interact with build pipelines, how we can get data back reported from the build pipelines, how you can access build logs if something goes wrong, and so on and so on. Where do I find the end result of the build pipeline? Where is the image stored? And how do I define the repository, for example? And please also provide feedback into this repo, either into this issue as a comment or as a separate issue labeled as a comment team providing basically feedback of what would need to change for the build pipelines, what kind of RFEs we need to work on, what kind of visibility issues we need to solve maybe for the build pipelines to be able to consume them or work with them from the project Meteor, so they are easily accessible from some kind of a controller that knows a GitHub URL and is trying to produce an image capable of spawning an environment. Again, if you're interested in this working stream, also assign yourself. Any questions to this one?
Is the end goal an operator?
The end goal right now is to gather feedback and understand what kind of expectancies, what do we expect from the build pipelines to deliver, and what is the current state of the build pipelines. So basically figure out RFEs for build pipelines before we can tackle on anything in Project Meteor, or how can these two things collaborate. The end result for the project commit is something like an operator, maybe not in the first iteration, maybe in a second iteration, but in the end, we would like to be able to do this in a stateless fashion, that we can query the build pipelines, we can task the build pipelines, we can task Jupyter Hub and whatnot with spawning pods and whatnot. So yes, maybe keep in mind that at some point, all of this should happen without any human interaction via some kind of an operator.
Don't keep in mind that it will be an operator or this and that on the technological aspect. Just ignore all that stuff from my point of view. It's way more important to get that nice and easy flow going than to figure out do we need a bash script or an operator, right? So there might be some kind of iteration like 15 or 75 or something like that, where we really create an operator. But the end goal, as I understood Francesco's question, the end goal is really figure out a smooth workflow, especially for this part in this first sprint. Let's figure out what's not really good.
And is this, I guess I'm still a little bit unclear. Is this going to be like general or very specific to the needs of the Elira tutorial? Because we'll have to like deploy specific things for that.
This is definitely general because you don't need to be working both of those work streams for Project Meteor, and you should be able to investigate and get familiar with build pipelines, even without any knowledge of how the Elira tutorials work.
And just as Tom did, I'm going to do it also. The end goal in the next iteration is to have this stuff being part of roads, so that every of our customers can build his own stuff, her own stuff, using these tooling. Why is it part of roads when we are talking about that general service that's out in the open internet? Because not all customers are out there on the open internet. Especially you guys in America have a few organizations which are very concerned about internet stuff, so they keep everything in their own organization. They should also be able to use our tooling. And now I'm going to add what I added before. Don't think about that stuff right now. Right now, it's just about the smooth experience, understanding the build pipeline, figuring out what's happening in a build pipeline, what might be the metrics, what might be the things that somehow break if I'm using it, because I need human interaction. Every human interaction should be considered a bug for us right now, right here. If we need to configure something, that's a bug. If we need to have something in a YAML file that is deployed automatically, but it's very complex to understand what's happening and why, consider it a bug. we need to work on that. But right now, just go ahead and try to figure out what the pipeline feels like and understand it.
Yes, I would like to emphasize that any human interaction in any of these parts is basically a bug in our scenario in Project Meteor, sense. So we don't want any human interactions anymore, except handing over the URL.
And just for the records, everybody be clear, we obey our new AI overlords, right? Just
yes,
to feed the test data into their machine learning algorithm.
Should we add a prayer at the beginning of this?
Definitely.
Okay. A third work stream we have here is...
Wait, Tom. Maybe before we go into the third and last one, can we define something like acceptance criteria for these kind of cards? I added a super global one to the first one, which basically said a set of issues should be the result or the acceptance criteria. Is it something that we can do for this one too, or is it too general to say a set of issues?
I've added a broad acceptance criteria here, but it's very broad as well. I don't know. I think in this case, when we try to get people familiar with stuff, it's hard to have a hard criteria because I don't know how to measure that somebody is familiar with something without questioning them and testing them on the knowledge, and we don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think the best you can do is open issues. Or have like a shared Google Doc that for our demo go through next time and say all of the collected issue ideas that we came up with. But
I think opening issues is the best way to do it transparently, and we can measure it by filtering per labels or something like that if we need to measure it. That's maybe for Christoph if he needs to measure it. Okay, let's move on to the third work stream. That's data-driven stuff, data-driven development, Team Telescope by Hema.
Yeah, so for this sprint, it's pretty similar to what the first two work streams are doing. In fact, I think it's going to be a little bit overlapping with those as well. So the idea for this is, again, understanding the CD process, the continuous deployment process, and the pipeline in general for what we're doing for the Elira tutorial, and basically creating some kind of flow chart for this entire pipeline process, that how we sort of see it and how we understand it. And the reason why we're doing this sort of flow chart or visualization is so that it's easier for us to figure out which parts of the pipeline or which components of the pipeline are measurable, because the end goal is, again, coming up with metrics that could be used to measure the performance of these pipeline throughout the process. So part of the acceptance criteria is, one, coming up with this flow chart. And before that, of course, reviewing the entire CD pipeline. So I'm guessing we'll be working again, similar to the first two work streams, to get familiar with it. Coming up with this flowchart diagram, and then based on this diagram, basically pointing out what are the metrics we can think of for each of these components, and then identifying which is the best data source to get these metrics from. By default, we are going to refer to Prometheus, but if Prometheus is not available for some reason, or these metrics could not be achieved through Prometheus, then we need to again think of what is a good data source for this sort of metric. So that would be the overall task for this entire issue for this sprint.
And I would do Christoph here now. If you don't know the technical details and aspect of it, you just think of any metrics that may be useful. It's a valid input. We want to track those metrics, even if we don't have any data source for it or a way how to get those data. We can figure that later.
Yes, always think about what we're trying to achieve here, right? We want to show what kind of impact, what kind of adoption, what good AI COE has. So that should be the guiding principle for the metrics. If we figure out that 17 million people use our service and that nobody is running the resulting notebook or the resulting container image, that is like, okay, good metric. Let's see what we can learn about it. I mean, it doesn't say anything because we need to have more metrics on that, but that would be a nice metric. If you have ideas like that, hopefully on a lower level, add them, feed them in.
So are we talking about the user adoption metrics and how people are using the pipelines, or are we also talking about the performance of the pipelines? Like, I don't know.
Well,
The
if you
technical aspect.
yeah, if you are thinking about that, everybody is using our stuff to build images, but nobody is running the images. If that is the metric, we need to dig into that one, right? It might be because the build takes 15 days. So on a very low level, the metric obviously needs to be how long does a build take? If we brainstorm and figure out it might be due to usability, we need to figure out where the usability breaks. So it's really all the things. It's not just about time or resources or something like that. It's really trying to answer these super global questions. I think, where did we do that, Hema? In the discussion with Kofi, with Kali Dolphy, right? Don't dig into metrics and come up with questions that these metrics can answer, right? Be a data scientist, understand the subject matter that we're looking at, and then dig into the metrics that we really need.
That makes sense.
And I think the correct phrase is be a subject matter expert, not be a subject matter. That's good.
Good. So these are pretty broad, basic issues that we have for this current sprint. It's again 1 week long sprint. So if you're already familiar with any of these topics and you think you can't think of any improvement for that subject that you already know a lot about, pick whatever other work stream you don't know much about to get familiar with as broad scope of it as you can. So we don't have any knowledge silos in this project, and we get some each of us has at least some level of understanding of all the topics in the project, so we can, if we're discussing stuff in the meetings, you're not left out and you know what is being talked about. Feel free to pick whatever issue you want to work on. Feel free to pick more than one if you want to spend time on this. We definitely would welcome that. And with that, let's say that this sprint has just started, and see you in a week.
One more thing.
Okay.
If we're talking about demos, each and every Monday, if we're talking about demos, if you pick something up, think about demoing it. And the demo is not showing source code on your screen. The demo is, hey, I found out that blah, 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 and I want everybody to know. So if you're coming into the wonderful domain of law and order, and if you figure out something about that that is relevant to our project, demo it. It might be just talking for 3 minutes about that thing and pointing back to whatever URL you investigated on. It's not about source code. It's more about getting into that groove. We're working on stuff. Everybody should know about that. And we ignore US American holidays because we are very inclusive in here. So everybody should demo on a Monday. Tom, back to you. You're kind of managing this sprint demo shit. I don't care about holidays and stuff.
Yeah, me neither. I'm
Good.
not having any holidays.
Right.
Or do I?
Welcome to Europe, Americans. Welcome to Europe.
Okay.
It's
Or
one of
maybe I
our
do.
earliest national holidays. I think that it will be, no one will be around.
I do have holidays as well. Christoph,
What?
you're the only one who doesn't.
Yeah, whatever. Then let's put it on a Tuesday or something.
Yeah, let's figure it out after the meeting. I'll reschedule if possible, and if not, we'll see what we can do about it. That's a question for my next 20 minutes after the meeting, and I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, let's try to keep these demo meetings interactive, right? So in TOTH, we sometimes turn them asynchronous, so everybody's recording his stuff and posting it to YouTube. But let's try to keep this for Project Meteor a little bit interactive, at least in the beginning, so that we can really learn, see, watch, listen, talk about stuff. Seems to be a good approach. So maybe we're just going to reschedule it to some other point on Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't care. If you feel like, okay, I'm done with my stuff and it's Monday morning, reach out. Well, not this Monday morning, but every Monday morning, reach out, right? I'm pretty sure there's enough stuff that we can have a look at. So if you're done early, reach out. If you have something to demo, try to record it and put it in the backlog, but let's keep some interactive demo session.
And that's it. Do we have any questions?
I do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
How do I join the Google Chat channel? The link in the calendar invitation doesn't work for me.
How come? That's a wrong question, right? I'll try this one. Does it work for everybody or for nobody?
Put issues like that on issue number 20, so Tom can fix it asynchronously.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Good. We're good to go. Let the fun begin. Enjoy your week and see you on a sprint planning number 2 and sprint demos number 1 on Monday or whatever day it is.
All right. Bye. Thanks,
Yeah,
Tom.
bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.